Ever since her parents bought the clawfoot bathtub, Janie had felt ill at ease when she went to the toilet. Her father said it was a vintage Victorian tub, but she suspected he had just gotten it cheap from an old antique store. Almost everything they owned was used. Her father could never resist a discount. Something about the antique bath bothered her. Perhaps it was the dark, ugly reddish-brown stains on the porcelain. Maybe it was the way the gnarled cast-iron legs of the bath jutted out at an odd angle. They looked like the paws of some monstrous, misshapen beast. Sometimes she imagined the bathtub suddenly standing up and scuttling out of the bathroom while her back was turned. Janie was almost 13 years old, but her mother still treated her like a child, telling her when to get up, when to do her homework, when she could watch TV, and when she had to go to bed. Her parents seemed to argue constantly about everything. Even the slightest thing would spark a feud that lasted for hours. She couldn't remember a time when there had been peace and quiet in the house. All day long her mother and father would be at each other's throats, having argument after argument. Often at night when her parents were yelling and screaming, Janie would put a pillow over her head to block out the noise and cry herself to sleep. With all the chaos at home, the young girl sometimes felt as if she was losing her mind. Lately she had begun to doubt her sanity more and more. Every time she went into the bathroom to take a shower or brush her teeth, she would see things out of the corner of her eye. Reflected in the mirror she could see the clawfoot bathtub behind her. Once, she thought she saw blood running out of the faucet. But when she turned to look, the taps weren't running. On another occasion, she fancied she saw some dark, shadowy shape lying in the tub, its head barely peeking over the side. Of course, she spun around, her heart racing with fear, but the clawfoot bathtub was empty. Whenever she undressed and stepped into the tub to take a shower, she had the strangest sensation that she was being watched. The hair on the back of her neck stood up and she felt like someone was staring at her naked body. One night, while she was taking a shower, she dropped the soap. As she bent down to pick it up from the bottom of the tub, she lost her balance and fell backwards. Suddenly, it felt as if hands were grabbing her and holding her under the water. The terrified girl kicked and struggled, eventually freeing herself from the invisible paws that seemed to clutch tightly at her skin. Spluttering and gasping for air, she thought she could hear faint laughter echoing around the small bathroom. In the morning, she decided to pay a visit to the local antique shop where her father had purchased the clawfoot bathtub. When she asked the owner about the vintage bath he had sold a few days before, she was shocked by the horrifying tale he had to tell. Apparently, the old clawfoot bathtub dated back to the Victorian era. The man said that it had once belonged to an infamous and reviled serial killer named George Hay. Janie's jaw dropped and she began to shake with fear. The man said that the serial killer would lure young girls back to his house and run a bath for them. Then, while they bathed, he would spy on them through a hole he had drilled in the wall. When they least expected it, he would pounce on them and hold their heads under water until they drowned. The evil murderer then chopped up their bodies with an axe and disposed of the pieces in the garbage. After a number of young girls went missing in the area, his terrible deeds finally caught up with him. A neighbor was snooping through his trash when she came across the grisly remains and contacted the police. They arrested him and put him on trial. He was found guilty and executed by hanging. Janie was terrified beyond belief. She realized that she had to convince her parents to get rid of the clawfoot bathtub before something horrible happened. The young girl ran back to her house as fast as her legs would carry her. When she got home, she found her father sitting alone on the living room sofa. The TV was off and the house was deathly quiet. "Where's Mom?" asked Janie. "She's upstairs taking a bath," said her father. "I'll go check on her." Janie sat on the sofa while her father went upstairs. The house was so quiet it unnerved her. She wasn't used to this much silence. Suddenly, she heard a series of short, sharp clunks coming from upstairs, followed by slow, deliberate footsteps that echoed across the ceiling and traveled down the stairs. Her father appeared at the door to the living room. His eyes were glazed and he had an odd look on his face. Then she noticed he was holding a bloody axe. "Your mother's finished," he growled. "Now it's your turn to take a bath." Kashima Reiko is a Japanese urban legend about the ghost of a woman with no legs who haunts school bathrooms. Warning: They say that after you hear the story of Kashima Reiko, she will appear to you within a month. If you don't want to see her, don't hear this. Kashima Reiko is the ghost of a woman who lived in the city of Hokkaido in Japan. One night, she was attacked by a group of men. They beat her badly, abused her horribly, and then left her for dead. She tried to call for help, but nobody heard her. She tried to find someone to help her, but she crawled onto a railway track and collapsed, unconscious. The train came along and ran her over, killing her and cutting her in two. Her body was severed at the waist. Ever since then, Kashima Reiko's vengeful ghost has wandered the world searching for her missing legs. She is mainly encountered in school bathrooms, but also may appear in your bathroom at home in the middle of the night. When you enter the bathroom, she will ask you questions. If you cannot answer her questions correctly, she will tear off your legs. If she asks, "Where are my legs?" the answer is, "On the Meishin Expressway." She will say, "Who told you that?" You should reply, "Kashima Reiko told me that." Sometimes she asks a trick question, "Do you know my name?" Do not say Kashima or she will kill you. The correct answer is Mask Death Demon. Kashima stands for Ka = common mask, Shai = shinen, dead person, Ma = ma, demon. It is said that after you hear the story of Kashima Reiko, she will appear to you within a month. Oiwa's story is one of love, betrayal, and tragedy. It begins in a small town in Japan, where a beautiful young woman named Oiwa found herself entangled in a series of unfortunate events. Oiwa was a beautiful young woman who lived in a small town in Japan. Her boyfriend's name was Aiman, and although he didn't have much money, Oiwa loved him very much. She was overjoyed when her childhood sweetheart asked her to marry him. After the wedding, they moved in together and the happy couple were soon expecting a baby. Oiwa didn't care that Yemen was poor, but as time went on, he became angry and depressed about his lack of prospects. Yemen soon grew to hate his happy young wife and started an affair with a rich young woman named Om. He romanced her for months and eventually she fell in love with him, despite his poverty and the fact that he was already married. One day, father came to see Yemen. He told Yemen what a shame it was that he was already married because his daughter loved him very much. The father went on to tell him all the ways that he could ensure his future son-in-law's wealth and success. Yemen listened intently. Yemen spent a great deal of time thinking about what Umi's father had told him. An evil plot began to form in his mind. He decided that the only way he could marry Umi was to somehow get rid of Oiwa and her unborn child. He thought that the easiest way to do this was to secretly poison Oiwa and make it look like she had died of natural causes. Poor Oiwa was totally ignorant of her husband's murderous plans. Blissfully unaware of the fate that was about to befall her, she continued to happily prepare for the birth of their baby. One evening, when Oiwa and Ayman were sitting down to eat dinner, she noticed her husband was strangely quiet and nervous. She encouraged him to eat his dinner, but he would not touch his food. He yelled at Oiwa and told her to stop fretting and eat her own meal. She needed to be strong for the baby, he said. Oiwa finally gave up trying to tempt Yemen's appetite and started to eat her dinner. It wasn't long before she felt very sick. Yemen watched her coldly as the poison did its work, not offering her any help or comfort. But Oiwa did not die right away. Her beautiful face became disfigured from the poison first, then she slipped into unconsciousness. Ayman was too much of a coward to finish the job he started, so he put Oiwa's lifeless body in bed. Eventually Oiwa woke from her coma, remembering nothing of the poisoning. She had lost her baby, and her face was ugly and terrible, but Oiwa lived. Yemen was desperate. He played the part of the concerned husband, but he was looking for any way possible to rid himself of his wife. One evening he took Oiwa for a long walk. They made their way to a cliff, and Yemen looked around to see if anyone was nearby. No one was in sight. Yemen pushed Oiwa off the ledge. Her broken body was recovered, and Yemen gave her the best funeral he could afford, spending all of his money in a great show of marital devotion. Of course, Yemen knew his money troubles were only temporary now that Oiwa was gone. Thinking his worries were over, Yemen planned his wedding to The night before the marriage was to take place, Yemen noticed his bedside lamp was dimming. He looked at it curiously, as it seemed to be changing. The disfigured face of Oiwa suddenly replaced the lamp, growing larger and larger in the room. "Betrayal!" it hissed. Eamon grabbed a stick and swung at the face, but Oiwa disappeared and the lamp smashed and fell to the floor. Eamon thought he heard the faint laughter of a woman from outside. Shaken, Eamon convinced himself that the vision was simply the result of drinking too much alcohol earlier in the evening, and went to bed. The next day, Yemen had forgotten all about the specter from the night before. He and Umi were wed. When he lifted her veil, however, her beautiful young face was replaced with Oiwa's horrible visage. "Betrayal!" she hissed. The horrified Eamon drew his sword and swung it at the ghostly apparition, cutting Oiwa's head off. The severed head rolled down the aisle of the church, but when it came to a stop, it had Umi's face and not Oiwa's. He heard the faint sound of laughter again. Eamon ran to his tiny house, looking for a place to hide. There was a pounding at the door, and Umi's grandfather demanded that he open it. When Eamon did so, Oiwa was standing there. "Betrayal!" she hissed. Once again Eamon tried to decapitate her, but when his sword finished its work, it was Ume's grandfather that lay dead. Eamon ran for the cliffs, Oiwa's laughter following him. He stopped at the edge and looked down, perhaps changing his mind. It didn't matter. Passers-by reported seeing a woman push Eamon off the cliff before she jumped after him, laughing all the way down.